To celebrate her father's retirement, Samantha returns to her hometown. Unexpectedly, she finds out that her high school boyfriend has been staying with her father at their house. Forced to live with him in the same house, she tries to avoid her feelings, but she ends up falling for him once again. In the opening scene, we see Samantha walking down the sidewalk before entering the coffee shop. As she orders the usual, she sees Jake Gillette on the TV above the barista, answering some uncomfortable questions. Upon being asked a rather invasive question about his game loss, Jake calls out for his coach, who is actually Samantha's father, and that brings a smile to her face. She reveals that the coach is her father, and the barista can't help but ask about Jake. However, a phone call saves her, so she moves to the side. Coach Derek mentions the game loss, and Samantha hopes that they'll do better next year, but the coach isn't so sure. Finally, she asks him to tell her what's going on, and Derek reveals that he plans on retiring. It takes Samantha by surprise, but before she can get any answers, he ends the call, claiming that he has to go back to class. Stormed by adoring fans outside his manager's office, Jake rushes to get through the crowd, but makes sure that he gives love to his fans. Almost immediately, his manager suggests they do a lot of interviews and interaction with the press to keep his career alive. He thinks it's a good idea because Jake looks great on camera either way. Jake isn't so happy with the idea, given that he lost the game, but Larry assures him that the people love him regardless. Later in the day, we see Samantha working by her desk when she gets approached by her boss. He gives her a list of the publishing books, but she is surprised to see the list is so small. Samantha has been hired by the company to launch young adult books, to give a chance to the young adults to rise in their careers, so she's very disappointed to find out that no young adult books will be published that year. As if postponing them isn't bad enough, her boss lets her know that they've decided to drop that initiative and focus more on cookbooks. Given that her work is great, Harry asks her to stay with the firm and work on the cookbooks, but promises that he'll talk to the board. On her way home, she talks to her best friend Diana on the phone, and she happens to mention the snowcoming ceremony. Diana begs her to come, and surprisingly ends up convincing her, despite her not wanting to come at first. Seeing the kids building a snowman reminds her of the days she used to go to snowcoming, and how much she used to love it. She lets her boss know about the ceremony, and even though he doesn't fully understand it, she assures him that she'll be working online, so there's nothing to worry about. Driving into town, looking at the old stores she used to go to, brings a smile to Samantha's face. Arriving at the house, she is greeted by her father, who is surprised to see her. As they get inside, she spots a hot chocolate on the table and assumes that it's for her. Excitedly, she takes a sip, and that is when Jake comes out from behind her father, revealing that the hot chocolate is his. Startled to see her high school sweetheart, she doesn't know what to say and stays quiet. Her father lets her know that Jake will be staying in his usual room, and she is more than confused to find out that Jake has been staying regularly. Wanting to escape the awkward situation, she decides to go to Diana's, despite them asking her to stay. In Diana's classroom, Samantha can't help but rant to her bestie about Jake's audacity to stay at their house after what happened in high school. But Diana lets her know that the coach has been like a father to Jake, and that he visits more than her. Admitting that she's right, Samantha agrees to sit on the bleachers with Jake for the ceremony, but doesn't want to share a house with him, so she asks to stay in the guest room. Surprisingly, Diana doesn't let her stay, and reveals that she's actually pregnant, and that they're remodeling the room for the baby. Jumping from excitement, Diana embraces her in a hug. Assuming that she's going to be an honorary aunt, she expresses her gratitude. But Diana lets her know that she's going to be the godmother, making her even more excited. Given the good news, Samantha assures her that she'll manage to live with Jake. As she returns home late in the night, she sees her father sleeping peacefully on the couch. Carefully, she takes his glasses off and kisses him on the forehead before heading into the kitchen. There, she sees Jake making a cake, and is surprised to see that he can cook. Revealing that he's taken some cooking classes, he struggles to frost the cake properly, so he hands the spatula to Samantha. She jokes about him having servers for everything, and he lays in on the joke. He asks about Diana, and Samantha reveals that she's pregnant, among the many other things she has on her list. Given that she's organizing the snowball, Samantha has been asked to help, but she isn't sure she wants to. Jake is confused as to why she wouldn't want to help, reminiscing about their high school years when they had so much fun. But she reminds him of their senior year, when she sat alone in her living room waiting for him. Right as she says that, her father walks into the kitchen and interrupts their conversation. He wishes them goodnight, so Samantha decides to head to bed as well. As she does so, Jake stops her in her tracks and apologizes for what he did in the past. However, she doesn't say anything. Walking into her room, she can't help but smile at the memories from her childhood. Sitting down, she sees a picture of her and Jake in high school that makes her even sadder. Opening the little jewelry box, she sees the necklace she used to wear all the time. A golden heart with pictures of her mother and Jake. As she's looking at the necklace, she hears footsteps outside her door, and as she looks at it, she can see someone standing in front of it. Knowing that it's Jake, she hopes that he'll knock, but unfortunately, he doesn't have the courage and leaves. The following morning, she hears a commotion outside, and as she looks through the window, she sees the coach and Jake playing ball. Jake spots her, and that seems to distract him as he films to catch the ball. Laughing to herself, Samantha stops for a second and thinks that the whole situation is weird. While Samantha brings lunch to her father at school, only to avoid Jake in the house, Jake can be seen working out while talking to his manager. Given that Snowcoming is the following week, Jake asks his manager to postpone the commercial they're shooting, because he wants to be there for the coach. Lenny suggests bringing a press crew, but Jake doesn't want anyone following him. Walking through the school, Samantha decides to visit the library, where she sees Ms. Alice. Surprised to see her old student, Ms. Alice embraces her in a hug, with a huge smile on her face. The library was like a second home to Samantha, especially when her mother passed away, which is even more devastating when she finds out that the library is closing due to inactivity and lack of funding. Next, she heads to the gym, where Diana and her husband are waiting so they can start decorating. Excited to see Diana's husband, she embraces him in a hug. As they engage in a conversation, Diana heads to the leader, which only makes her husband concerned about her safety, given that she's pregnant. Hearing a voice from the side, they all turn to look in the same direction, which is when they see Jake. Jake congratulates Diana on her pregnancy, and her husband, who happens to be a fan, struggles to say anything. Jake offers to help, and unfortunately for Samantha, Diana asks him to help her with the streamers. They start working with the streamers, but Jake struggles to understand what Samantha is asking him to do. Jokingly, he claims that there's a metaphor in their work for their relationship, which is a comment Samantha doesn't like. Luckily for him, right as he says that, a bunch of students walk into the gym looking for Diana. Scared of being recognized, Jake takes Samantha's hand and drags her to the supply room. Samantha asks him what they're hiding for, and he lets her know that he's afraid of the kids exposing his location. Understanding his situation, she asks him what she's doing there with him, and he decides to be truthful. Aware that the whole situation might be awkward for her, he lets her know that he only wants to honor his coach, who has been like a father figure to him. It makes Samantha smile to hear him talk about her father in such a way. Finally, he asks her whether she wants him to go, but surprisingly she asks him to stay. They're finally being honest with each other, but their conversation is interrupted by Diana asking them to come help her. As they finish decorating the gym, they all get together and admire their work. On their way out, Diana starts the conversation about Jake, claiming that he still has feelings for Samantha. However, Samantha doesn't want to hear about it, given that he broke her heart, so he doesn't get a do-over. When Samantha arrives home, she is surprised to see a pot roast for dinner, given that Jake was with her all day. Impressed by his cooking skills, she sits down to try his recipe. Coach talks about his retirement, claiming that he's ready for some new blood, and wants to do many different things. Samantha mentions stopping by the library, and how it hasn't changed since they were students, and how sad it is that it can't stay open. As she grabs a bite, she can't help but compliment Jake on his cooking skills. However, he thanks her, because he got the recipe from one of the cookbooks her company published last year. He thinks that hearing this would make her happy, but on the contrary, Samantha's face drops. Later in the evening, Jake brings out a chocolate cake for them to enjoy around the fire, and they talk about their week. Letting him know about her issue at work, she complains about not even being sure whether she wants to continue working or not. She admits to being in awe of her dad, because he can finish a chapter like that easily. Jake advises her to start fresh and look for the thing she loves to do, but Samantha doesn't even know what that is. Staying late into the night to make decorations for her father's retirement, Samantha sneaks out of the house and heads to the school. As she enters the school with a bag of decorations, she sees a flashlight waving around and assumes that there's a robber. Bravely, she walks into the classroom where the flashlight is, only to see Jake there. As both of them calm down, they realize that they've come to do the same thing. He shows her the different things he's made, and they decide to get to work. When they finish, they return home and sneak in, so the coach doesn't hear them. The following morning, the coach sees the decorations, but instead of being happy, he is bummed out, because he has to clean it all out. Later in the afternoon, Samantha decides to visit Ms. Alice in the library. Concerned, she asks if Ms. Alice minded her coming to the library every day, and Ms. Alice assures her that she enjoyed seeing her. On the other side of town, we see Jake and Graham racing to the top of the hill, competing to see who's going to arrive first. Jake opens up about losing his parents at a young age, and the coach stepping in. That is the time he fell in love with Sam, which he ruined in 3 years. Despite him knowing that she doesn't want to be with him, Graham assures him that she's single, which gives him a glimpse of hope. Walking into the library, Samantha sees a girl sitting alone. The girl seems to be struggling to finish the assigned book, as she complains to Samantha about it being boring. So to make matters right, Samantha tries to help her choose a book of her liking. Given that she doesn't like to read books, but loves watching fantasy movies, Samantha hands her a couple of books, and promises that she'll find them interesting. Later in the afternoon, Jake steals Samantha from her desk to take her to lunch in the woods. As they walk around the snowy road, they reminisce about the times they used to spend in the woods. Jake mentions their first kiss, and Samantha reveals that she remembers everything about it. but nothing about their last. With hope in his eyes, he says that it may not be their last, but Samantha just walks away. A couple of feet in front of her, she sees their old treehouse that has been remodeled, and can't help but be excited about it. As they sit down to eat, Samantha tells him about Sage, the girl from the library, and how her name is still on one of the books she gave her. Given the lack of attention at the library, Samantha mentions something about connecting her firm to the library so she can help it continue working. It is just an idea that she has, so she doesn't take it seriously, but rather decides to go back home and finish her real job. As they get down from the treehouse, they find themselves close to each other as the tension rises, but quickly snap out of it. On their way back, they stop at some shops to buy something for Diana's baby, which is when Samantha spots the poster Jake has created. After seeing it, she decides to ask him some questions. He admits to being burned out. When it comes to the game, he loves it, but the fame is what gets to him. Given that there are bills to pay, he explains that sometimes he has to do commercials so he has some kind of income. As he complains about having huge crowds follow him everywhere he goes, Samantha's eyes light up as she comes up with the most brilliant idea. With everyone gathered in the library, she suggests they do a tailgate with Jake so they attract customers, which will attract them to their books. Without any choice, Jake decides to use his power for good and agrees to help them. The word spreads out in the newspaper, and even Lenny, Jake's manager, finds out. Soon after, he calls him to make it an even bigger thing, but Jake assures him that he doesn't need anything else, and that he's having fun. Samantha seems to have finally found her place, a place where she feels most comfortable. She tells Jake that she can't do cookbooks anymore, and he completely agrees with her. A voice echoes through the library that gets their attention. Running to the entrance, Samantha sees Sage, the girl to whom she recommended some books. Sage starts explaining about how she loves the books, and luckily for her, Samantha reveals that they are all part of a trilogy. Seeing her get so excited about the library really brings a smile to Jake's face, as he watches her talk with passion about something that she loves. Later in the evening, before they head to the bonfire, Jake suggests they do a little detour. The first stop is his old Nana's house, where a new family now resides. Seeing the house reminds Jake of the first day of camp. The coach called his Nana and suggested that Jake come to camp at no cost, which is something that Jake will be forever grateful for. He wishes to do something like that as well, so Samantha reminds him of the summer camp he does every year. It is a program he's very glad of, but it sucks, because it's not long enough for him to get to know the players. Smoke rises in the distance, which only means one thing, that the bonfire has begun. At the bonfire wishing booth, Jake and Samantha write their wishes, and even try to see each other's, but end up throwing them into the fire. As they're talking about wishes coming true, Samantha tries to find out what's going on between her father and Ms. Alice, but Jake doesn't reveal anything. Instead, he takes the chance and twines his hand with Samantha's, a timid smile on both their faces. We see the coach and Ms. Alice back at home, making cookies for the tailgate. It seems that the coach is ready to reveal it all, but Miss Alice asks him not to, since she's afraid of losing Samantha. Instead of pressuring her, he understands and gives her some time. In her bedroom, Samantha tries to put on the golden heart necklace, but fails before her father comes to wish her a good night. Afterward, Jake enters her room, and once he sees the necklace, he offers to help her put it on. The tension is high, and it seems like the couple is ready to start all over, but something keeps pulling them away. The next morning, Samantha bangs on Jake's door until he shows up distressed and confused. Instead of explaining anything, she just lets him know that she's kidnapping him, and that he has 3 minutes to get ready. They arrive at the top of the hill, where they used to try to hit the tree, going down on a toboggan. Same as when they were young, they sit on the toboggan. And just as they're about to hit the tree sliding down, Jake swerves, and they fall onto the snowy ground. Upset that they didn't hit the tree, Samantha asks why he jumped, and he tells her that hitting the tree isn't a good idea in the end. She reminds him of his job, and he assures her that they're professionals. Offended, she grabs a snowball and throws it at him for calling her unprofessional. They start playing in the snow like kids, until they look at each other and the tension can be felt again. Curious, she asks about his wish at the bonfire, but he changes the theme to the pictures on her necklace. Instead of continuing the conversation, she asks if they can go back, because she wants to check her emails. The night before, Samantha came up with the idea to sell some young authors' books in the library at a discounted price, so it would benefit both the library and the author, and she is curious to see if any of them have responded. Opening her email, she is surprised to see so many replies. After working on her laptop for a while, Jake puts her jacket on, along with a hat and gloves, and takes her to the snow so they can make snow angels. Samantha's loud laugh echoes, and Jake admits that he has missed her laugh. Luckily for him, she lets him know that she misses having someone that makes her laugh. Wasting no time, they head back to the house to make Jake's famous soup for the tailgate. Back at the house, Diana calls, asking what's going on between her and Jake. Not having anything to say, Samantha assures her that nothing's going on. Moving on to a different subject, Diana thanks Samantha for helping Sage to start reading books, claiming that she's her first student in her literacy campaign. Grabbing all the things she needs, Samantha heads out to the front, where Jake is waiting for her to make s'mores. As they sit down, Jake opens up about not knowing whether he'll continue with football or not, given the accident. But the idea of retiring doesn't scare him so much, and he might even like it. The big day finally comes, but some unexpected things might be happening. Looking outside the window, Ms. Alice sees a huge crowd of people ready for them to open, so she decides to call everyone early. The whole group arrives, and the coach suggests they open early, which everyone seems to agree with. As they get the table to set it up outside, the fans can't help but ask when Jake will be coming. Given that he's turned his back on them, he decides to reveal himself, and the crowd goes wild. He thanks everyone for coming, and lets them know how important the library is for him. A reporter, Cassie, interrupts him as she asks some very personal questions, to which Jake doesn't respond. Instead, he asks her to focus on the event and the importance of it. The tailgate seems to be going smoothly, adoring fans strolling through the rafts of the library, finding the books of their choice. Jake seems to be concerned about Cassie, however, as he asks Lenny to take care of her. Unfortunately, Lenny comes a bit too late, as Cassie fills up Samantha's mind, and even reveals that Jake has a plane ticket booked out to fly the same night. Devastated, Samantha decides to leave, as it becomes a bit too much for her. Some time later, Jake notices that Samantha is nowhere to be seen, but Graham lets him know that she has left. Looking straight ahead, he sees Cassie waiting for a scoop, and immediately knows that she has something to do with it. Borrowing Graham's keys, he exits the library, ready to look for Samantha. Given that she's nowhere to be seen, he assumes that she'll be at the treehouse, and sure enough, he finds her there. Immediately, she lets him know that she doesn't want to talk, and that she can't believe that she's let him manipulate her again. Not letting her get away, he asks her to stay and listen to him. Throughout their school years, she's always been the one that was by his side, and even though he made a huge mistake, she's still there. With tears in her eyes, she admits to being defeated, and that she can't compete anymore, but he assures her that there's no competition, and that it's only Samantha he wants. Admitting to having a plane ticket, he reveals that it's only because he has a meeting, and that he'll be at the snowcoming ceremony, to which he asks her to come, because he has a surprise for her. As he climbs down the treehouse, tears start filling Samantha's eyes as she becomes worried. The big day is finally here, as we see the ceremony take place. After the game is finished, the presenter calls Jake and Coach on stage to reveal the winner of the free ticket. Surprisingly, it is Sage. As the ceremony comes to an end, the speaker asks the crowd to give a big round of applause for the coach. He gives a speech thanking all the people of the town, and claiming that he couldn't have picked a better town to raise his daughter in. But that isn't all. The speaker reveals that there's one more surprise. Jake reaches into his bag, takes out a golden trophy on behalf of everyone, and hands it to the coach. He spots Samantha in the crowd and gives her a wink, which only makes her curious as to what he's doing next. Finally, the truth is revealed, as Coach congratulates Jake for becoming the new high school coach. While everyone cheers and celebrates, Lenny can't help but feel devastated on Jake's behalf. He even tries to talk him out of it, but Jake assures him that there's no chance. He sits next to Samantha on the bleachers, and asks her to come back to town and be with him. However, she can't see herself going from being the coach's daughter to the coach's girlfriend, and she needs to make her own path in life. Despite saying that, she receives a text from her father that will change everything. They're called to the library, and once they get there, Ms. Alice lets them know that they have enough funding to renovate and restart. She also reveals that she's retiring, and even asks Samantha to work in her place and launch her literacy campaign from there. Shocked, she doesn't know what to say, but ends up agreeing with it. The truth is finally out, as the coach and Ms. Alice decide to reveal that they've been seeing each other, and that they plan on getting married. Samantha asks them why they didn't tell her earlier, and they are shocked to find out that she knew all along. After hugging the both of them, she turns to Jake, who tells her that he has to leave. She reminds him of the dance, but he doesn't say anything, just simply leaves. The snowball dance finally begins as we see students coming in with their partners. Diana and Samantha stand together as they talk about the amazing time they're going to have, now that Samantha is back. As they start to dance, Diana spins Samantha directly in front of Jake, and she is surprised to see him there. Shocked, she asks him what he's doing at the party, and he assures her that he isn't going to stand her up twice. As they indulge in a dance, she asks about his wish at the bonfire. Looking at her necklace, he opens it up to see his picture there, and finally knows that his wish has come true. After many years, they share a kiss with the same passion as when they were just kids.